Alrighty, I'm going to answer the question for you, how to braise Belgium endive, which is probably not a question that you had on the tip of your tongue prior to seeing this DVD. But this is one of the classic ways that endive, Belgium endive, is prepared. It's very French by nature, the preparation that we're going to do today. And it will give you an idea of a way in which you can handle endive. I'm also going to give you a couple of other ideas. Now, don't confuse Belgium endive, which is what this is, with curly endive, which is like a lettucey type vegetable. Okay? This is Belgium endive that originates in Belgium, and it is also now grown in the United States also. But most of the Belgium endive that you see, wherever it's grown, it's called Belgium endive. If they grow it in Idaho, it's still Belgium endive. So wherever you see it, that's probably where it's from as a rule. Okay? Now, what we're basically going to do here is we're going to saute a little bit of onion, and we're going to wrap up the endives in bacon. I got a few of them done already. And we're going to cook them slowly in a small stovetop or oven braising pan. Now, what does braising mean? Let's just cover that real quick. Braising means cooking slowly, typically, with wet heat. And in the case of the braised Belgium endive, we're going to come up with a braising liquid when we're done. All right, I'm going to answer the question for you today, how to braise Belgium endive. Probably not a question that you had on the tip of your tongue, but you're going to learn a little bit about braising vegetables in this particular demonstration, okay? Belgium endive, which comes from Belgium, and this is a Belgium endive right here. It's a bulb that has many spears, and I'm going to show you what's inside. We're going to cut a raw one open, and I'll talk to you about a couple of other uses that the Belgium endive has in the cooking world. The recipe we're going to do today, braised Belgium endive. What does braised mean? Braised means cook slowly with wet heat. Now, in most cases when things are braised, there's what you might call a residual braising liquid that's left over after whatever food is being braised is cooked. And that braising liquid is typically used to make sauce for the item that was braised. That's a very classic viewpoint of braising, no matter what it is. Braised duck, braised lamb shank, braised endive, braised fennel, whatever the item is that you may be braising. So I'm going to start out by just showing you the inside of a Belgium endive. Richard, if you come down to this endive right here, I will show you two things. First, when you cut the end off, that opens up the endive so that you can take these, what I would call spears, off of the endive, okay? Now, a lot of times, and come back up to me now, a lot of times when people are serving hors d'oeuvres, you'll find multiple recipes where an individual spear of endive is filled with food, and then this is used like as an hors d'oeuvre. It's a boat, if you will, to hold something else. A lot of people will put little goat cheese and Parma ham or little fresh sliced tomato with this, that, and the other thing inside the Belgium endive spear. That's one use. It's also used and tossed in a salad with vinaigrette or whatever dressing you happen to be using. And sometimes it's just used for decoration around salads, and it's not really mixed into the salad. That's not as common, of course. And then the salads and using the endive as an hors d'oeuvre would probably be the two largest uses, salads being the first use of Belgium endive and the most common of all the uses of the Belgium endive. The braised Belgium endive, now there's some properties to the endive, and there's a reason why this dish was even developed, braised Belgium endive. This is a bitter winter type vegetable. It's not bitter, like totally inedible. You can eat it raw or cooked. But when you cook it hot, like we're going to do when we make this braised Belgium endive dish, we're going to incorporate a lot of other flavors that are going to offset the bitterness of the endive. And one that, in such a way that some people that may not normally enjoy this type of vegetable because they're not used to it, Europeans grew up on this, and they're used to bitter vegetables mixed in with different things in their eating and cooking. but you'll understand if you reproduce this recipe yourself what the advantages are. Incorporating some other flavors, cheese, cream, stock, onions, garlic, bacon, which are all the things that are going to be in this dish today, okay? Now, if you come back down to the cutting board here, Richard, I want to show the people what the endive looks like that, see? It's very pretty, and ultimately, we are going to end up cutting our endives like this after they're cooked and putting sauce and Parmesan cheese and gratining the top of them when we're done. So I'm going to move right along to preparing this dish for you now. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slice some onion and cook it in a little bit of butter in a saute / braising pan. So what I mean by that is this is a pan that you can saute in and braise in, okay? It's just designed like that. And here is the look of that kind of pan. It has some depth, so you can put some stock in it and cover it up, put it in the oven, etc., okay? Now we're going to put a little bit of butter in the pan here. I got some melted, whole, unsalted butter here that we're working with. And we're going to take a little bit of onion, slice it up. Come on down here, Richard. Remember, when we're slicing the onion, we're slicing it from stem to stem, not from side to side in little half rings and so on, okay? And we're going to add the onion to the butter. And I give it just a pinch more onion. So I got about 3/4 of a medium-sized Spanish onion here. And we're going to put a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt, being careful and understanding that we are braising endive and we are making a braising liquid. Being careful not to put too much salt and pepper in it, because as we reduce the chicken stock, which is what we're going to use as the braising liquid, later we may concentrate the level of salt beyond what we want it to be. So we want to hold off on the salt a little bit until we're finishing the braising liquid later. So we're just going to put a little bit in at this point. Okay? And I'm going to add a little bit of sage and a little bit of fresh thyme and a little bit of tarragon to this recipe, okay? The thyme, which has just an unbelievably fragrant, if you can come on down here on the herbs for me, Richard, we're going to pick all the little flowers off of the thyme. You can use dried leaf thyme or fresh thyme for this particular preparation. And I'm not going to chop the thyme. I'm just going to add it right in here, because the length of time that it's going to cook, it doesn't matter whether it's chopped, because it's not being used in a quickly prepared dish. It's going to have plenty of time to get whatever flavor and aroma that thyme has to offer over the course of the cooking time. Okay? And I've got some fresh tarragon here. And we're going to pull the green leaves off of the little branches also in the case of the tarragon. Tarragon, of course, is a little bit easier to clean than thyme. Thyme tends to be more branches than little herbs. Tarragon we'll chop just a little bit because these are fairly large. We'll throw them there in the onions. And we got a little bit of fresh sage here. We're going to take some sage leaves. And we're going to cut them up. And we're going to throw them right in there with the onions. And as you can see, pan on down here, Richard, we got some onion, sauteed with some fresh thyme, a little bit of salt and pepper, some sage, and some tarragon. Now, I have a couple of endives that are what they call red endives also. It's basically the same endive, and it's a hybrid of the basic white and light lime green Belgium endive. Okay, this is another version of Belgium endive, another way of selling it to you, really, and has a different color, and it works in different ways, mainly because of the color. The flavor is exactly the same, okay, as the white one. So we're going to wrap. I have some par-cooked bacon, which is part of this recipe here, which I put on a sheet pan and baked in the oven. And we're wrapping up the endives. Now let's say, in this particular case, for example, I had a piece of bacon that wasn't long enough to go around the endive. So what you do in that case is, I'm going to turn this down a little bit because I think it's cooking fast enough for me. This is not about browning the onions. You don't want that. We're going to ultimately be serving these onions with the braised endive later. And we don't need to brown them. This is not a browned dish, if you will. Until the very end when we brown the Parmesan cheese on top, but that's a different kind of thing. Now you can layer the bacon pieces on top of each other so that you can get all the way around the endive, if you see what I mean. And you just secure this with a toothpick, like so. I've got 1, 2. Here's another one that needs a second piece of bacon to make it work. Okay. And let's try this one. I think we can squeeze this one on with 1 piece of bacon here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to end up braising 6 pieces of endive here. Now this item is also served as a first course. But typically, it'd be served as a vegetable, too. But you can serve this as a first course in a multi-course dinner, too. Let's see if we can get this piece of bacon around here. Maybe. The important thing, of course, is that the bacon is in the braising pan, not so much that it is able to stay wrapped around the endive during the entire time. Although it does help because it gets the pork flavor right on the endive. Okay, now we're going to mix, as this recipe calls for, a little bit of garlic into the chopped onion. We move the onion, sauteed onion, back onto the stove area here. I took it off for a second because I thought it was cooking fast enough for us. There's something very basic about the way this is being done and the finishing process, which I will kind of go over with you as we're doing the finishing process. But braising, in this particular case of vegetables, typically all kind of looks a little bit like this. You cook a little onion or something with it, add some flavoring, seasoning type items, then add the item that's going to be braised, cover it with stock, and cover it up and cook it slowly in the oven, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to place the endives right in here with the onion now. And you see what I got down here? Pan down to the endives, Richard. And we're going to take some chicken stock. And we're going to cover these 1/3 to halfway. Now I'm going to put this on top of the stove, and we're going to cover them up on top of the stove, and I'm going to bring this to a simmer, a very light simmer on top of the stove. Then I'm going to quickly put it in the oven. So let me talk to you while I'm waiting for that to come to a simmer about a couple of options you can exercise or incorporate into this particular recipe. Now, you can, at this particular point, put a little bit of tomato concasse into the recipe. And there's other things you can add to this. You can put shaved fennel into this recipe. You can put whole garlic cloves into the recipe instead of chopped and serve them whole on the dish. All right, it's come to a boil now. It's coming to a simmer quickly here. So I'm going to take this and put it into a 375-degree oven. And we're going to time-elapse this particular preparation, of course. This is going to take approximately 40 minutes, 50 minutes, maybe an hour, right in there, for these endives to be tender enough to eat. When they are tender enough to eat, we're going to take it out of the oven. We're going to remove the endives, and we're going to proceed to make sauce out of the braising liquid together. When we come back in about 45 minutes to an hour, or right now. So I'll see you when the endives are cooked and tell you exactly how long they took. The Belgium endives have been braising for approximately an hour and 20 minutes. I turned them over about 40 minutes, 35 minutes through the cooking process, rolled the endives over so the other half was submerged in the chicken stock. And they are now done. They are tender enough to eat. We're going to pull them out of the oven right now and show you what this is all about. As you can see, the braising liquid has dissipated tremendously. And now we have half the amount of chicken stock that we used to have. Now these Pyrex oven-proof glass vessels for cooking and browning and baking and gratining in and out of the oven, we're going to use to what you might call plate up and prepare for the final presentation of the endives. Let's start by getting the endives out of there. They're nice and tender, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Give me a shorter pair of tongs, will you, please? Luis? Thank you, sir. Now, just in case you happen to have saw the written recipe or heard me mention something, if I did, about adding the lemon to the braising liquid, I want you to go all the way back to the beginning of this course. One of the things I told you was, if I make a mistake, I'm not going to redo it. I'm going to show you what I would do if I had to fix it. Excuse me. Well, I did not put the lemon into the braising process with the endives. So we're going to start by putting a little bit of lemon juice right in here. Now the braising liquid itself, we're going to start reducing it right now on top of the stove. Did you get a good look at that?
Not really.
All right, let's take a good look at that braising liquid. You got your fresh herbs, your onion, your garlic, your chicken stock. Okay? And this is going to be the sauce for these endives in a minute. Now, in a separate pan, I'm going to reduce the cream that this recipe calls for right now. We just need a little bit of cream in there. Now, the endives themselves. Let's take them up on the cutting board. Let's pull the bacon off. They look nice. If you're not doing a video like I am, you might want to let your endives rest a little while before you handle them, just because they're easier to handle when they're not real hot. But it's not going to stop me from doing it for you at all, believe me. This is one of those cases where the braising liquid is thickened via the reduction only and the addition of the reduced cream. There'll be no thickening agent per se added to this item. All right, we've got all the bacon there. And let's put a little more lemon here. I want to taste that braising liquid just for the fun of it so I know kind of where it's at right now. This braising liquid is remarkably good right now. It didn't take that much. Beyond the natural process, I'm going to reduce this down the fire just a little bit.